from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to Windsor. It sounds like a simple name change, but it was a master stroke of public relations that saved a dynasty. Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on the most famous royal family in the world, the House of Windsor. How did this German-descended family become the quintessential symbol of British identity? And how have they navigated a century of unprecedented change, scandal, and tragedy to remain on the throne? Forget the fairy tales. This is the real story of power, survival, and the weight of a crown. Let's rewind to 1917. World War I is raging, and anti-German sentiment is at an all-time high in Britain. The problem for King George V? His family name was Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, a direct link to his German ancestry through Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert. With German Gotha bombers flying over London, the name was a public relations nightmare. So on July 17, 1917, a royal proclamation was issued. The family adopted a quintessentially English name, inspired by the ancient castle that has been a home to monarchs for nearly 1,000 years, Windsor. It was a brilliant move, severing their German ties and rebranding the monarchy as defiantly British. The first major crisis for the newly named house came less than 2 decades later. In 1936, George V's son, Edward VIII, ascended the throne. His reign, however, lasted less than a year. The reason? His love for Wallis Simpson, a twice-divorced American socialite. As king, he was also the head of the Church of England, which at the time did not permit remarriage if a former spouse was still alive. The government, the public, and the Commonwealth were thrown into a constitutional crisis. Faced with an impossible choice between the woman he loved and the duty he was born to, Edward chose love. He abdicated, famously declaring he could not carry the heavy burden of responsibility without the help and support of the woman he loved. The crown passed to his shy, stammering younger brother, who would become King George VI. George VI, the reluctant king, rose to the occasion, becoming a powerful symbol of national resilience during the darkest days of World War II. He and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, refused to leave London during the Blitz, famously stating, "The children will not leave unless I do. I shall not leave unless their father does, and the king will not leave the country in any circumstances whatever." Their presence at Buckingham Palace, even after it was bombed, solidified a deep bond with the British people. This was the House of Windsor, defining itself not by divine right, but by shared sacrifice and steadfast duty. It was during his reign that his eldest daughter, Princess Elizabeth, began her own public life, preparing for a destiny she never expected to arrive so soon. In 1952, while on a royal tour in Kenya, Princess Elizabeth received the news that her father had died. At just 25 years old, she flew home as Queen Elizabeth II. Her coronation in 1953 was the first to be televised, a deliberate decision to bring the monarchy into the modern age and directly into the homes of her subjects. This act set the tone for her entire reign. Over the next 7 decades, she would become the longest-reigning monarch in British history, a constant stoic figurehead in a world of dizzying change. She witnessed the dismantling of the British Empire, the rise of the digital age, and dramatic shifts in social attitudes. But the Queen's reign was not without its storms. The 1990s were particularly turbulent, a period she herself described as her annus horribilis, or horrible year. The divorces of 3 of her 4 children, Prince Charles and Princess Diana, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, and Princess Anne and Mark Phillips, played out under the intense glare of the media. A devastating fire also swept through Windsor Castle. The public began to question the relevance and cost of the monarchy. The institution seemed out of touch, its fairy tale image shattered by very public, very human dramas. The greatest crisis of this era, and perhaps of the Queen's entire reign, was the tragic death of Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1997. The outpouring of public grief was immense and unprecedented. Initially, the royal family's traditional reserved response was seen as cold and uncaring, leading to a wave of public anger. The Queen was accused of misjudging the mood of the nation. In a rare and pivotal move, she returned to London, addressed the nation in a live broadcast, and paid a heartfelt tribute to Diana. This moment was a turning point. It showed that to survive, the ancient institution had to learn to adapt, to listen, and to show a more human face. The 21st century brought a new generation and a fresh approach. The weddings of Prince William to Catherine Middleton and Prince Harry to Meghan Markle were celebrated globally, signaling a more modern, relatable monarchy. These younger royals championed causes like mental health, conservation, and humanitarian work, using their platform in new and dynamic ways. However, the family drama was far from over. The decision by Harry and Meghan to step back as senior working royals and their subsequent interviews created deep rifts within the family, once again raising questions about the pressures and protocols of royal life in the modern media landscape. In 2022, the world watched as the Second Elizabethan era came to a close. The death of Queen Elizabeth II marked the end of an age. Her 70-year reign provided a link from the era of Churchill to the age of the Internet. The crown has now passed to her son, King Charles III, a man who has spent his entire life preparing for this role. His ascension marks another pivotal chapter for the House of Windsor. Can he successfully navigate the challenges of the 21st century? Can he slim down the monarchy and redefine its purpose for a new generation while still upholding its 1,000 years of tradition? From a pragmatic name change in the midst of war to navigating family scandals under the 24/7 news cycle, the story of the House of Windsor is a masterclass in adaptation. It's a dynasty that has learned, sometimes the hard way, that its survival depends not on divine right, but on the consent and affection of the people. It has modernized, mourned, and celebrated in the public eye, transforming itself from a distant imperial institution into a family that, for all its pomp and privilege, reflects the complexities and contradictions of the nation it serves. The story is far from over, and the world will be watching to see what the next chapter holds. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the history of the House of Windsor. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history.